E te atua, kia tau iho rā tō aroha ki runga i a mātou, o pungonga e whakapono ana mātou ki a koe. I runga te ingoa o tō tama ihu karaiti, tō mātou kai whakaora, āmeni. Nā whakamoe me te whakawhetai e hue. Mō manakitanga ki te iwi e tau nei. Ko koe te piringa ka puta ki te oranga e te ariki pai marire e te ariki pai marire. Oh, morena, morena, morena. Actually, my voice is a little bit croaky this morning. Oh, thank you for putting up with my karakia and my himini. And it's just getting the practice in to do this karakia that was gifted to me. So thank you for that. Interesting morning I have this morning. Yeah, there's a few things that I want to talk about. So I put up that we're going to talk about the election law review, which is quite interesting and fascinating. And I just want to give my whakaaro on that because that's happening right now. And I think it's going to come in time for the 2023 elections. And if what I think is going to happen is going to happen, it could be a game changer. And just a little bit of a warning too on what I'm thinking may happen in that space. And then I don't know if you're aware, but there has been kōrero going around on Facebook in regards to the Mahuta dynasty. And I want to have a bit of a kōrero about that because me and my darling last night listened to a podcast of Sean Plunkett, who I know personally. And he was the comms manager for the Opportunities Party with Gareth Morgan when I was in there. And he's an investigative journalist. And he goes way, way, way back. So he's an experienced journalist. And his podcast was well researched. He had a reporter there that had gone and did some research on that. And I want to have a kōrero just from a Māori perspective. Nepotism from a Māori perspective is different from nepotism from a colonized or colonial perspective. And so I want to have a kōrero on that and see if we can shine some light on this, because they are definitely, the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta is definitely going to come under pressure with this once it hits mainstream. At the moment, it's only going around the fifth estate, which is social media, because we really don't have a fourth estate because they're sponsored media. And you always seem to hear it first from the fifth estate, which is social media, before you hear it in the fourth estate. So, and I'm serious about that. I mean, there's a serious issue. It came out in the New York Times over the last couple of days, and it's about the 400 million contaminated vaccines that Emergent said had been dumped, but with all the deaths and with all the serious side effects associated to the rollout of the vaccine, you have to question that, because they lied to the FDA. Now, 400 million doses is a shitload of vaccines. So that's blowing up in America, and yet mainstream media here did not once mention it. So that's blowing up since Monday in the US, and our mainstream media did not once mention that. And don't you think that that should have been at the top of the news? Don't you think? But anyway, I wasn't going to talk about that, but I just thought that it was important to highlight that that's blowing up in the US media, mainstream media, um, and um, uh, and nothing was mentioned here. So you have to start questioning. If you've seen it first on my channel, which is holy shit, um, if you've seen it first on social media before you see it on mainstream media, there's something seriously wrong with our mainstream media, and no wonder the public is losing faith and trust in you, mainstream media. Anyway, kia ora to Melanie. Kia ora to Patiria. Thank you guys for tuning in and sharing your comments. Uh, kia ora, Feral. Is that your name, Feral? Feral no more. I don't think that's your real name, but anyway, says, hey Donna, I'm Scottish, Irish, and a 16th Māori. So although a colonizer, I have more issues with English capitalist colonizer than most. Look into what they did to my Bonnie, Scotlander, and Irish families. By the way, I'm seventh generation New Zealand slave. Oh, kia ora feral, no more. Well, actually, I have Scottish and English whakapapa as well. My mother's maiden name is the Mackay, so we come from the Mackay clan from the Highlands of Scotland. Apparently, we originated from Ireland. So, and they say most Scottish people did originate from Ireland, but hey, I'm not strong on my whakapapa list, so it's just what I've heard. And I come off the Wynyard whānau, direct descendant of the second governor here in Aotearoa, Governor Wynyard. Keep that silent. So I get you when you say, like you've got the colonizer's blood in you. That's toto. That's your whakapapa. And you've got the oppressed blood in you, or toto in you. So it can be, I've had a very close friend says to me, gee, your whakapapa must confuse you. And I said, no, not at all. I said, I accept my whakapapa, and I always stick up for the underdog. So that's my Māori side. So anything to do with my Māori side, I'm tuturu, and I'm a warrior on. But I did want to have a kōrero about what's happening. Firstly, we'll go to what's happening sorry, I just got some messages. The Electoral Review Commission, we'll knock that one off first. So an independent panel has been appointed to the electoral law with some targeted changes likely before 2023. General Election Justice Minister Chris Farfoy says it will look at issues such as the length of Parliament term, the voting age, the funding of political parties, and the Electoral Commission's 2012 recommendation on changes to MMP. So those recommendations was, that if we're wasting votes, then that's not good for democracy. Way back in the day, I'm just going off memory, and so that's where I think potentially the parliamentary term is going to be looked at, and some of these other issues that they've risen. So the parliamentary term, I think, has always been a Labor policy, was to push it out an extra year, so go from 3 years to 4 years. So I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, because if we've got a tyrant government, it means that we're enslaved for an extra year, right? If we've got a tyrant government, at least within 3 years, you can get rid of them quick, smart. Okay, so yeah. But if democracy is increased, then maybe there could be an argument that there's justification to have an extra year. From a administrative point of view, I get that. 3 years is not a long time. I get that. So I think they're going to look at pushing it out from 3 years to 4 years. They will also consider dropping the age from 18 to 16, which is a game changer. So a lot of these young ones are pretty onto it, especially when it comes to climate change. So, and at the end of the day, it's their future. I mean, we're only their kaitiaki. It's actually their future. So they need to be, I think, have a say in their future. But anyway, I'd be interested in your thoughts. And the funding. So there's been argument for public funding, and yes, Judith, you brought up public fund parties, no corporate interest, and that's about true democracy, right? So you have to have 500 members to 500 members to start a party. And so if we're looking at public funding, maybe it's based on your membership. So dependent on your membership depends on how much money you get from the state. I don't know. Or we can't have equal. We can't have equal sharing of all minor parties. I don't know if that is a prudent way of spending our money, but certainly you've got to have some sort of ratio, and so maybe membership is it. Food for thought. The other issue that I've had as well, and Māori have had, and we've complained about, and when I was in the Māori Party, JT was going to take, or did I think take, the Electoral Commission to task in regards to corruption over the Māori role. I know for a fact that he lost Tamaki Makaurau by 1,000 votes. There were 1,000 votes that were voided in his electorate, and which means that they were just cut for one reason or another. But I think the worst thing was that there were more people turned away from at the door, like that, like he reckons thousands turned away at the door, and I know that that's a fact because it happened in my electorate. So everything that happened to JT happened in my electorate, and I rang up the Electoral Commission saying that there's racism within the polling booths, and you know, the polling booths didn't have Māori electoral papers, so people were turned away, and Māori struggled to go out and vote anyway because they feel that they're getting the same, which is oppression. And so if you turn a Māori away, they're more than likely not going to come back. So there were a number of issues around racism within the electoral process that put barriers and restricted Māori from voting. And so if those restrictions and those racisms weren't there at the last election, we would have seen JT in power. he would have still been the leader for Te Pāti Māori, right? But alas, that's not the case. But he certainly raised some issues around improper actions within some of our polling booths, and I experienced that personally as a candidate with my own polling booth. So I just want to put that out there. The other issue is you can fit 13 general seats into one Māori electorate, and so I had to travel thousands of kilometres around my electorate, and I know that if in mainstream they had to do the same amount of work that I did, they would be demanding that we have a bigger slice of the pie, because we have a lot more work to do. So we had the same restrictions in regards to one general seat. You are only allowed to have, I can't even remember how much it was in, was it 26,000? gosh, I don't know, can't remember. I never worried about that side of things. The committee did. So when it came to advertising, there was a capping, right? And the Māori electorate seats, they can fit 13 general seats into, on average. This is, so we got 7 Māori seats, right? And you can fit 13 general seats on average into one Māori seat. And so a Māori electorate candidate had a hell of a lot more work to do than any mainstream general seat. But we had the same capping as one general seat. So there was an inequity, and again, a racism. Whether it's bias implied or not, doesn't matter. The impact is detrimental to Māori. So these are the types of barriers that the general population are not aware of, and I am just expressing that because we're going through a review now. And will they consider maybe looking at a way of cutting, maybe adding more Māori seats? Gee, that'll go down well with National Enact. Watch that, Huckaboogie. But is it fair that David Seymour or Chris Luxon only have one general seat to worry about, and I have the size of 13 general seats? So is that fair? No. Ask my committee. Try put billboards around 13 general seats, David Seymour and Chris Luxon. See how you like that. That's a lot of work. Actually, campaigning, that probably was the most difficult part, was getting those billboards out and getting them down at the same time. So let us think about that, whānau, as we're going into the general election, because my electorate is Hauraki Waikato, which is, like I say, it's the whole of Coromandel, right down to Waihi, all the way up to Papakura, all the way across to Kawhia, and down to Te Awamutu and Cambridge, I think, around those ways. So if you can visualise that rohe, so up to Papakura, the whole of the Coromandel, down to Waihi, across Cambridge, up to Kawhia, right around and as far as Papakura. So go right around. That's my electorate. So something needs to be done there, and we've been screaming out about inequities in the electoral process for, oh gosh, I've been involved in politics for 30 years, so that's how long. So anyway, that's the electoral review. Watch this space, whānau, because it could be a game changer. I don't know if they want to get rid of the 5% threshold. Why? Because the establishment parties, the big parties, like to keep the little parties out. They like to have a hangover from first past the post, because the 5% threshold keeps smaller parties out. The Electoral Commission recommendations did say that those are wasted votes, and it's not good for democracy. So let's see. They may only go from 5 to 4%. Or they may go from 5 to 3%. I would hope that they would drop the threshold altogether, and so every vote is counted. That's true democracy. But we have experienced fascism in this country. We have experienced tyranny in this country. So, gosh, could that be a electoral sweetener for us? Could it be? I don't know. Food for thought, though. Whānau, food for thought. So, kia ora, Kate. Kia ora, William. Kia ora, Melanie. Chris. What does Chris Andrews say? Nanaia Mahuta's nepotism featured on the platform. Yeah, well, it was Sean Plunkett's kōrero that I was talking about, Chris. Yes, and Jacinda's meeting with BlackRock. Holy hicka. Holy hecker. BlackRock and Vanguard own most of the world. Apparently, I think I saw somewhere that Vanguard owns BlackRock, but the subsidiaries in their own right. I know, right? I mean, she's not even hiding the fact that she's a globalist. This is Jacinda Ardern is not hiding the fact that she's a globalist. So, we've got to remember this, and all and her minions, we've got to remember this when it comes to the election, because here's the thing: if she's not working on in our best interest, in the interest of Aotearoa, then she's working in someone else's best interest, her Uncle Claus, maybe. Vanguard, maybe. BlackRock, maybe. And who owns Pfizer and Moderna? Go do your research, whānau. Anyway, thank you for that, Chris. Judith says, well, they are saying independents were left blank in the Aussie election, and people phoning for advice were told not to tick the box. Oh, yeah. So there's all this. I mean, I don't know if that's the case, Judith, but my experience as a candidate in the Māori electorate, I experienced racism. Well, I didn't personally, but I had so many people that I had to advocate for during the voting time, because they were treated poorly. This is Māori. And so, and JT lost his seat because of it. So, if there is another reason for a shake-up, one thing I've got to admit is that you don't poke the bear when it comes to JT, because he'll respond, and they all know that. He's quite an influential Māori leader, love him or not. I had the privilege, and I'm going to say the privilege, because I've worked under a number of leaders, right, and just their talent and their skill. No one, a few of them, well, they're right up there. And I think in regards to leadership, me and my husband both agree he's probably one of the best generals. Whether you agree with him or not was another thing. Oh, no, he was one of the best political generals I've ever had the privilege to meet, and I've met some awesome ones, some really right up there ones. So that's just letting you know the skill of the man, and people do know that if he takes you on or you take him on, well, good luck is all I say. Anyway, thank you for your comments, Judith. Tony, at least got a vote for. At least I got a vote for Kitty McKee, member of the New Zealand Outdoors Party. That's awesome, Tony. What else? I got on Māori roll, as my vote would mean more in the electorate I was in. And yes, it wasn't great in Inner Wellington to vote and on that roll. But then last election, they wouldn't let me off the Māori roll. No, that's right. So they're going to be looking at that as well, so that Māori can float in between the general and the Māori seat. Because the other thing was, a lot of us, if we didn't register at the age of 18, this is interesting. If we didn't register at the age of 18, you think because you were born Māori that you automatically go on to the Māori roll, and you didn't. You automatically went on to the general roll. And a lot of people that never voted in their lives, that voted at the last election, could only give the Māori party the party vote, because they were automatically put on the Māori roll, general seat roll. And so the Māori Party challenged the Electoral Commission for that too. And they were saying if they're born and they tick you are Māori, then automatically they should go on to the Māori roll and then choose to opt off straight away. Just given the options. So they were locked in, and they were locked in for two elections, I think. Before they could opt out. So all that sort of BS, and there was a lot of BS, and that last 2020 election actually exposed the BS. So there's no surprise. Maybe JCT said, do a review or have you in court. Maybe that's how the review comes. I don't know. But anyway, it's there, and I think it's a good thing. Francis says, what does Francis say? Makes me wonder if they say 400 million V contaminated, that it's a lie to cover up the fact that they knew exactly what was in those. Yeah, well, since I brought it up, I better Google it again. But I wasn't going to talk about it today because I do have a guest speaker, and I have to keep an eye on my time too, Whānau. So I do have to watch my time. She has a link, or they have a link. So as soon as I see them come up, I will interview them. But I just want to bring up. So that's the electoral. That's the electoral review, right? That we're talking about now. Nepotism. So I'm waiting for it to come out, break out in mainstream, but it hasn't as of yet. Sean Plunkett and the Daily Examiner have come out with articles on it about the Mahuta dynasty. And me and my husband spoke about it last night because within Māoridom, you've got to understand, we come from a collective mindset, right? And nepotism within Māoridom is actually quite normal. It's actually quite normal. And so we don't often cringe like our Pākehā whānau do when it comes to nepotism, because we have a collective mindset, if this makes sense to people, because we have a collective mindset, nepotism is acceptable, and it's usually rangatira whānau that stay as rangatira because of nepotism. And I think you'll find that in a lot of indigenous cultures, that nepotism is quite normal. You look at the royal family. You look at the royal family and the privilege and nepotism that sits there. So it's not foreign to our colonizing colonial whānau, well, colonizers, because the crown did colonize the world, the empire. So nepotism was important to hold on to power, right? So you saw it with the monarchs around the world, and you see it. Māoridom, it's very common. It's actually no surprise. And I was talking to my husband last night, and we had quite a deep discussion about it. And he was saying it's about protecting land, it's about protecting assets. And when you're reliant on a rangatira whānau to do that, if you look at what they are responsible for, is for our whenua and for our water, right? And that's where the puku of the issue is that they're there protecting the tribe's assets. They're not protecting it for themselves. This is not about them individually. The work they do as consultants may be, there may be some pecuniary gain out of that. But in regards to the mahi that they're doing, they're actually protecting their tribe's assets. And I just want to share it. So the Daily Examiner and Sean Plunkett, with his media outlet, are calling it a travesty, that it's conflict of interest, concentration of power. And I guess in a democratic society under the Westminster system, it is. But you got to remember that Nanaia Mahuta also comes from Kahui Ariki, so that means Māori royal bloodline. So her and her whānau sit in that space as well. And her father what was the general of the tribe, Bob Mahuta. So, he led the tribe in the days. He led their settlement process, their negotiations. So I just felt it really important to clear the air before this thing goes viral and shit's gonna hit the fan for her. And it's not that I do want to tautoko her in that sense that from a Māori perspective, it's not unusual. It's actually very common for the rangatira lines to be in decision making positions. So yeah, just a bit of cultural trivia before, because I think this is gonna shit's really gonna hit the fan for her, and in a way, I'm feeling ka aroha for her because she's only doing what we've been doing for a long time, and she's only doing what the royal family who are born into privilege really. If you're born into the British royal family, you're born into privilege, but you're also born into responsibilities and obligations as well. No different here for Nanaya. Yes, she was born into privilege, but she's also born into responsibilities and obligations for her iwi. And so that's where I think the lines between her ariki line, her tribal line, and her politician line may have blurred because the Westminster system doesn't allow for nepotism, but our Māori culture does allow for that. So there's been a blurring of the lines, but I understand, both me and my husband understand that blurring of the lines. And if you're a politician working under a Westminster system, you shouldn't blur the lines, basically, is what I'm saying. But hey, look at Judith Collins and her husband's company, Ovida. Hey, this is not just a Māori thing, whānau. So just don't make it a Māori issue. It's been going on. Nepotism been going on since Mai Rano. Mai Rano. All I'm saying is it's not uncommon in Māori culture and Indigenous cultures around the world, and also the British royal monarch. Can I say? But anyway, I just wanted to put my little 2-cent piece in to that kōrero about nepotism, multiple conflicts of interest, and it's talking about her sister and her husband, who I know personally. I used to work with her husband, and I've engaged with her sister at different levels. And those that don't know, she on the regional council, she is a member and I think the deputy chair for Waikato Regional Council. When I was working there, I actually created the Māori seats, Māori constituent seats within the regional council. It was my policy that created that seat, that created that opportunity for Tipa Mahuta. Just saying. Just saying. So if you want to point the finger in regards to Tipa being a member, you got to remember she was elected on. She was elected on. It's no different to our Māori seats that we have now. So she was elected on to that. She wasn't put on there by her sister. She had to be elected on, and her people will keep on electing her because she is experienced and she is an expert in her space. Whether people like it or not, she is. And I worked with Gannon for a number of years at the regional council as well, and so he's experienced in his space as well. People are trying to say that they got there because of their association to Nanaya. They still have to get elected on, and if there was a conflict, Nanaya stepped aside and another minister took over, and then people say, well, hey, she stepped aside, and then someone else took over that process, and then as soon as she was in, she stepped in again. So I guess it's the perception of conflict of interest. So when we're talking about democracy, it's a different issue. When we're talking about our tikanga, our kawa, it's actually quite normal. And so the conflict is between two worlds, really. But she has been a politician for nearly, oh gosh, 26, 27 years come next year, 26 years. And she is a politician under the Westminster system, which is supposed to be a democratic process. But hey, since the sixth Labour government's been in, you have to bloody question that. But anyway, I just wanted to have my 2 cent piece just so that you understood that. And coming from a Māori worldview versus coming from a Westminster worldview. So I'll leave that there. But I do. What I'm saying is I understand uh, uh, the situation, and me and my husband understand it because it's normal. It's common within our culture. Okay, so the 400 million contaminated. So it's a lot of contaminated vaccines. So Emergent Biosolutions in Baltimore between March 2020 and February 2022, vaccine maker Emergent Biosolutions was forced to discard or destroy up to 400 million doses worth of the key component of both Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca's coronavirus vaccine due to quality control issues, according to a congressional report published on Tuesday. The figure reflects more than 5 times what was previously disclosed by the beleaguered firm. So here's the issue. Basically, they lied to the FDA. The other issue is, did they get rid of those 400 million doses of contaminated vaccine? So this throws out in the congressional investigations probing into this biotech company is issues around the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine. Now, when all of this was happening, remember, when all of this was happening, those that dared to challenge were vilified. Those doctors and scientists that got up, that dared to challenge the rollout. Oh, is that? Oh, okay. Okay. Coffee? I have a cup of tea, hon, please. Thank you. Yeah. So there's some major issues, and during that rollout, we have lost whānau. Now, at this point in time, it doesn't say that Pfizer and Moderna were part of this, but here's the issue. Here's the smoking gun. Information. This is stuff that got out, right? This stuff was hidden from the FDA. What else was hidden? So there's all these reports about trials and the death of animals and tamir. I mean, gosh, the narrative has shifted so much. But this could be the turning point. My point is about the 400 million contaminated vaccines. And is there evidence that they did get rid of them, or did they just throw them out into the market? We don't know, eh? So my guest is here, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to bring her on now, whānau, but just wanted to talk about what's happening and the fact. Thank you, hon. Oh, awesome. Got ginger in it too. Green tea with ginger. The fact that our MSM, our media, did not bring this up, and it's blown up in the US, and it's gone through their mainstream media, and it certainly and what did I hear? Hipkins wanting to vaccinate our babies whilst this is blowing up. So we certainly have to look and put pressure on our government. But I'm going to introduce my guests. I'm going to bring them on now. Oh, kia ora. Kia ora, how are you? Can you hear
Kia
me?
ora. Yeah.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much for coming on. Nā mihi nui ki a koe. Nau mai haere mai ki te Facebook or Donna Pokere-Phillips. It's a real privilege to have you on. So we have been communicating via Messenger. If you would like to introduce yourself to the whānau, and then we'll carry on having a kōrero. Where you're from, who you are, where you're from, and why we're going to have this conversation.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. I am representing our little family here of 4 on Nukunonu, Tokelau. My wife, Anna, and 2 of our youngest. We came back in 2017, ex-Porirua,
Oh,
after
good.
living there for over 50 years, to live basically here. What brought us to this situation is we declined to have the vaccine, as they call it, and we've been in this nearly completed our nine months in house arrest.
So, what does that mean if you've been in house arrest for 9 months just for refusing to take the mandate? What does that mean? If you can explain that to whānau, can you go to shops or can you? Who gets your food?
Yes, good question. If it wasn't for my cousin who does our shopping when she can make it, we also had to arrange with the shop manager to get our some shopping done when my cousin is not available, and to access our finance from
Wow.
the from our local branch. Yeah, we would be struggling with accessing food from shops per se, but we also asked to be allowed to get our own supplies from across the lagoon in customary land. We were refused, or we haven't heard back from that request. Yeah, aside from a panel of the Taupulenga, that's our local elder council,
Yeah.
uh, reviewing our situation last December. Uh, we haven't heard any other official visit from them. So they basically left us to our own. But we are grateful because they um, maintain that I keep my pension, and
Wow.
also our share of food distribution that they occasionally have locally.
So, can you just explain your electoral system, your general whono? How do you pronounce your name so I don't mispronounce? So it's so important that we pronounce our names. Like my name is Donna Pokere-Phillips. How do we pronounce your name?
Okay. My name is Mahelino
Mahalino
Patalhio.
Pataliho.
Um, yeah,
Oh, kia ora,
Patalhio. The S is pronounced with the A. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Oh, kia ora mahalino. I really appreciate this, and it's important that we understand. And the reason why I'm asking about your electoral system, because are you part of the New Zealand system? Is Tokelau part of the New Zealand system?
This I have a New Zealand passport, and yeah, New Zealand. Tokelau is under New Zealand. We have a New Zealand administrator, Ross Ardern. If you haven't uh, heard,
So Ross Ardern is Jacinda Ardern's father, correct? And he
correct.
and he so Ross Ardern is the New Zealand High Commissioner or New Zealand what's his role?
Right. His role is called administrator for Tokelau under MFAT
Under MFAT. Okay.
or
Now,
through MFAT.
yeah, for MFAT. Now, Ross Ardern was responsible for the dawn raids here in New Zealand. If you remember
So
in
we
this
heard.
area, yeah, yeah. So is he
Yeah,
the reason why you're in house arrest?
I would say so. Um, I would say so. Yes.
Because was he responsible for bringing the vaccines over to Tokelau?
As far as I know, he's the man.
So, how long then do you expect to be under house arrest? I mean, you've been there for 9 months, and I must, that's why it's really important that we from Aotearoa actually understand the struggle from our Pacifica brothers and sisters, that this is real for you and your whānau. I mean, it takes courage. One, it takes courage to come onto a platform like mine because you and your little whānau are on your own in Tukalau. You're up against the system, but you're also up against Ross Ardern, who is part of the New Zealand system, government system.
Yes,
So it
you've
takes,
summed it up.
yeah, it takes it takes courage. It takes a lot of kahuna. That's why I really, uh, that's why I really want to acknowledge you for first reaching out to me and making contact with me. And then when you said that you were in house arrest, I was like, holy hicka, it's important that we share your story. Otherwise, it's just you and your little whānau on your own. So they can't stop you from communicating outwardly. I would like to and do this on a regular basis so we can. It's like a welfare check, so we can do a welfare check on you and your whānau to make sure you are doing okay, and we need to figure out how we here in Aotearoa, in New Zealand Aotearoa, how we can support you and your little whānau, because what you're doing is taking on your government, your whono, and our government at the same time. We're only taking on our government, but you're taking literally on two governments. Whew, you and your little whānau. I mean, they need to write a. Maybe that's what you should do. You should start writing your story, and then maybe turn it into a documentary or a movie. I don't know, because it's certainly, if you had not made contact with me, we wouldn't be having this conversation now. We wouldn't be aware. Do you know of any other whānau that are on house arrest, or were there other whānau, and did they, you know, through pressure, did they end up getting the treatment? Are there any other
Mhm.
whānau
Yeah,
on house arrest?
yeah. I was about to mention, Donna. There is two other families on Atahu Atoll. Um, as for Hakaoho, um, we haven't heard any families on there, but in total. I've heard the number 17, including children, are under this situation. Also, as far as the Tahu families, we recently heard a week or so ago that they have been allowed out of their house. Literally, they were worse off than us. They were not allowed to let their children play outside, but um, recently they've been allowed to go across their lagoon, and they took the chance and lapped it up. They were really happy with that, and we're thrilled for them, especially for the children. Um, yes, and that's that situation there to answer your question.
Wow. And so people are saying that they've seen some stuff come across on Facebook. So people, yeah, whānau over there in Tokelau are using Facebook to get their kōrero out. Can I ask, do you have security guards around your whare, or how do they ensure that you stay in your whare? I mean, I can't imagine having children locked up in a house. I mean, that's borderline torture, isn't it? It's imprisoning them. It's imprisoning children. I mean, this is
Yeah,
absolutely shocking behavior. And, I thought the United Nations
yeah.
are against torture. I mean, this is shocking
Oh,
behavior
it's
to hear that New Zealand government is part of this torture of children.
yes, that was really unheard of. To tell you the truth, we were shocked as well. Um, but that was the situation in Atahu, especially. Of course, we were not allowed to go outside our plot. Basically, we were allowed outside, even to go for a swim, but the others on Atahu were not, as far as we know. Of course, the village is out of bounds. Church, um, except they allowed us to the hospital when we need to go. Um,
Well, thank goodness for that, because I'm sure
yeah,
there's some breaches of international law happening with your lockdown, and the fact that Jacinda Ardern, who promotes kindness here in Aotearoa, father is acting in this manner, and thank you for helping us to expose this. Again, I
yeah,
do get mainstream media that follow my lives. They only do it to keep an eye on me. They don't do it because they want to interview me, but keep an eye on what I'm up to. So, what I want to suggest,
yeah,
and we can ask other whānau as well, is that we'll do this on a weekly basis. If you can ask them to, maybe you might want to do different whānau and basically it's a
yeah,
welfare check. It's a welfare check. We'll
yeah,
start doing I'll start doing some research, and I know the whānau watching this live will start doing some research on international law in regards to this house arrest. I mean, it's been 9 months, nearly a year, and how some children have been
yeah,
just locked up in their homes and not even allowed out to play. I mean, you'd think you'd be watching some sort of mad movie or something listening to this story. We can't believe that this is happening here in the South Pacific in 2022, and it
yeah.
just to
It,
show how broken our society has become, that we're using tyrannical actions over the supposedly vaccine that's supposed to look after you and your whānau, and yet I'm sure your mental health and mental well-being has been impacted
yeah,
on by 9 months of lockdown. And what about the children? I mean, it's a trauma
yeah,
that you and your whānau may never ever get over. So, this is so important, Mahelino. So, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else is there anything that we can do? Is there a way that we can koha maybe? Let's try and set up some sort of koha for you and your whānau over in Tokelau. Let's talk about that a bit further and you have a think about it. That maybe we can set up some way of sending if whānau want to donate to the families. The 17 people, is it 17 people or 17 families that are in lockdown? Oh, whānau, I think we might have lost our connection to Mahalino. But anyway, whānau, let's look at this. This is such a serious issue. So he's gone now. Such a major, serious issue. And again, if mainstream media was doing their work, doing their job, they'd know that this is borderline torture. And I'm certainly going to look at some international law. And if you can help me look at international law in regards to these people being put on house arrest purely because they weren't, 9 months, children being locked up for 9 months because they refused to take the vaccine. And the administrator, here he is, he's back on. Hang on. Oh, kia ora, kia ora. Thank you for coming back, Mahalino. We had a bit of a connection problem. What I was just saying to the whānau and explaining to the whānau that we're going to do some research and hopefully we might be able to find. Have you got a lawyer? Do the whānau have a lawyer over there that supports them?
Not a local one. We have managed to contact one through a podcast, Talanoa Sako, maybe connected to the Examiner. There is a question I'd like you to find out, Donna, for us. I've been wondering and hearing anecdotes about certain human rights law under New Zealand law that does not apply to Tokelau. I'm tired of hearing that because it doesn't say anything in our passport that we're no longer under New Zealand Bill of Rights when we come to Tokelau.
Well,
there seems to be a
so you still have a New Zealand passport?
Yes.
You still have a New Zealand passport? Yep. Is there a way that you can you send me through Messenger your lawyer and contact details so that I can hopefully make contact with your lawyer? And I will start and what I love about the whānau that watch my lives is that when I ask them to go and do some research, then they go and do some research and they contact me. So we, this is a shared burden, and we've got to rely on each other to support each other in these tyrannical times.
Yep.
And the fact that yous have been in house arrest for 9 months. 9 months. And have you met Ross Ardern? I mean, it seems to be he's the main player in all of this. Have you met him?
No.
Never. No, never. Okay. No. So you want us to look at the human rights and whether or not New Zealand human rights apply to you in Tokelau. Okay. We'll do that. Yeah. We'll look at that. And we'll also try and look at how to set up a maybe GoFund of somehow, or even if you are able. So have a talk to the whānau. And what the question I asked before we lost our link is it 17 families or 17 individuals, including children?
Individuals.
17
including children.
That are in lockdown. How many children?
Uh, I think there's 4 adults in Atahu, 8 adults, s- 7 children. I better get that right,
Yeah,
Donna.
yeah, okay. No, that's all right. I just want to know how many. So not quite half of them are children, basically. Is what we're saying. Nearly half of those that are
Yeah,
uh,
about that.
about 50% that are
Yeah,
imprisoned in
but
Tokelau or on home detention. What are they calling it? What are they calling
well,
it?
our official letter says house arrest. Lately, I've heard that they're trying to call it house isolation.
Isolating from what? The
As
new
if,
monkeypox.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no cases at all on Tokelau.
Well, if there's any Pacifica lawyers out there or whānau, you've got whānau that are either from Tokelau or have understanding of the laws between Tokelau and New Zealand and the lawyers here in New Zealand want to take up Mahelino and the whānau over in Tokelau, their case, please help. We're asking for, it's got to be, this is all charity. And we'll just see what we can do. I mean, we've done the first thing to expose what is happening on my channel, and hopefully mainstream media is watching this and is going to pick up the story. If not, what I want to do is bring you or any of the other whānau on once a week. So it's like we'll do the same thing. I'll send you a link and you can share it to whoever you want to come on and have a kōrero. This is your time to share your fellow's story. And we just need to expose this for what it is. It's it's
Mm.
torture. I see it. Yeah, certainly human rights breaches and torture for you guys because you stood up for yourself and your whānau. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Um, as what does Haki say? You cannot be arrested unless a crime has been committed. That's why they want to change the status from house arrest to house isolation. Yeah, there's certainly some breaches going on. So we'll organise and we'll keep chatting on Messenger. If anything urgent comes up, let me know and I'll do a live
sure.
straight away. I'll do a live straight away if there's any breaking news, and we'll go live. And we'll organise a bank account. So you talk to your whānau, we'll organise a bank account for those that I don't know if you can send kai over. That might be costly, but certainly a bank account where whānau from Aotearoa can send money over to the whānau there in Tokelau, and we can try and support you in some shape or form.
Thank you very much. We'll keep in contact.
We will. Thank you, Mahalino. Ka kite.
Okay,
Ka
bye for
kite.
now.
Bye for now. Kia ora rā. Oh, wow. That breaks your heart, whānau. That breaks your heart. So out of the 17, nearly half are children that were actually in the Atahu atoll, weren't even allowed outside their whare. And the administrator of Tokelau is Ross Ardern. Come on, mainstream media, do your freaking job. Go and suss this story up. But as soon as I get a bank account, as soon as if there's any breaking news with them, I'll let you know straight away. But thank you again, whānau. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Shaz, Ramari, Diane, Coco, Judith, JJ. You fellas are awesome. Haki. So, yeah, that's me for today. I'm going to tune out now. It's I have a bit of a broken heart. I'm feeling a bit muki for this whānau. So been interesting kōrero today, whānau. Watch this space. Kia pai tō rā. Have an awesome day. Ka kite. Kia ora rā.